Hi, it's Dr. Turan, and you're listening to The Pop. The Pursuit of Peace podcast is brought to you by SP Consulting Group, where the mission is bringing your vision to life.
All right, and welcome back again to The Pop, the Pursuit of Peace podcast. So, today we're going to be doing our final tip to thrive, our tips that we've been getting on Mental Health Awareness Month. It is the last Friday in the month. And today we have a very special guest, you guys. We have registered dietitian, Miss Angela Stansel here with us. And we started One Habit. We said we were going to stick to it throughout the year. I'm not even talking about New Year's resolutions anymore. Like, we literally throughout every day say, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to try. But of course, in regards to mental health awareness and your mental health, minding your mental health, doing a self-check, please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hi, thank you. First of all, let me say thank you so much for having me. I am excited to be here to talk about something that I love, something that's dear to my heart. So my name is Angela Stansel. Like she said, I am a registered dietitian. I've been practicing in the area for about 2 years, but I've been working in Memphis, Tennessee prior to coming to Los Angeles. And so my specialty area is really just making nutrition accessible to all types of people. Because often people feel really put back by nutrition. The idea of it seems really complex. So I hope that I'm able to make it a little bit less complex for everybody.
Well, that's what we are about here on The Pop. Like, we seriously, even in creating our healthy habits, we're all about peace here. We are not going to get stressed about being healthy. That is counterintuitive, right?
Exactly.
So one thing that I want you to really help our listeners with is when it comes down to healthy habits and making sure that it truly is a habit. What are some of your recommendations in regards to building a healthy diet? What does that look like in this day and age?
I think, first of all, just speaking on the mental health piece, I was having a conversation with my friends yesterday, also a group of dietitians. So this tells you how nerdy we are. In our office time, we're having these food conversations. But we're really talking about diet culture and how prevalent it is in our community and in our culture, because everyone's on social media. You get inundated with so many ads for weight loss, so many diets. You hear about your friend doing a diet, your mom is on the diet. Mm-hmm. And because everyone eats, everyone has an opinion about food. So for the consumer, you really have a stressful job of trying to figure out what is the right thing to do. So in terms of healthy habits, I really encourage people to get away from the diet culture. And what that looks like is, number one, not obsessing about what you're eating. So you just said, this is a podcast about having a healthy lifestyle, but also bringing yourself peace. Mm-hmm. And you cannot be at peace if you're obsessed about your food all the time. And what people don't realize is that we really create these kind of disordered eating patterns when we focus so much on what we're eating. So that's number one, not stressing about what you're eating all the time, not always restricting, because I think that's the first thing people think they need to do to be healthy is to restrict. Mm-hmm. And then also to be able to be in the moment when you're eating, enjoy your food, and then when it's over, you move to something else.
I wanted you to speak a little bit more about everybody's opinion of food and the obsession. What do you mean by obsession with food?
We are so obsessed. So going back to my example of my conversation with my friends yesterday, we were talking about an instance where a young lady was saying that she had always been dieting, as long as she could remember, she's been on a diet. And it's just interesting because we hear from an early age, especially in America, we start talking about dieting, weight loss. You should look a certain way. Your body should look a certain way. Even when you go to your physician who physicians don't necessarily have a substantial nutrition background. So a physician might say, you need 1,200 calories, and that's the key to you looking the way that I think you should look. But that's nutrition's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
So I think taking together those things kind of make people kind of hone in on a couple of things, the things that they think are wrong with them, and then kind of obsess with changing those things when it's not necessarily related to how healthy you are. For example, always waking up and taking your weight. People are really concerned about the numbers on a scale, but
I don't even have a scale anymore.
Thank you. I'm so happy to hear that. I have not had a scale. I haven't had a scale in years. And you know what? Really, what are you missing when you don't have a scale, right? You know your body. You know when your body feels different. You know when your clothes feel tighter or they feel looser. You know when you're not regular, if you usually are regular. Like, there are things that your body tells you that you don't need a scale to tell you. So things like that, we kind of just get so many messages repeatedly that cause people to stress out about numbers specifically, when that's not necessarily helpful.
And I think it's interesting to look at some of what could possibly be very simple things that you can eliminate when it comes down to stress. There is enough stress in people's life, right?
100%.
We have enough going on. I mean, we're even just as a society dealing with everything that happened with the African-American male that was killed by a police officer. We're also dealing with the pandemic. We're also dealing with just the normal life stressors, figuring out work-life balance for those that normally didn't work in the home, and those that normally did work in the home didn't necessarily have their kids there. They were either in school or in daycare, or they were able to have someone coming in and out of the house to care for their children. So it's like, when it's all said and done, why are you making the obsession something it's almost like, okay, I'm going to the store and I'm just going to pick up this extra bag that I know I don't need. You don't need to stress and obsess over these things when there's enough to stress out about. And that's what we're talking about. When we are looking at truly minding our mental health and paying attention to it, why not pay attention also to the stressors that come associated with dieting, your food, your palate, what you're eating, how much you're eating? That should just be taken out. And what would you recommend if someone is obsessing over that and that is a compulsion for that person? Some people even have eating disorders or are on the brink of eating disorders because of how they attach the mental to the food.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that.
So that's really complex. You're 100% correct on that. So for those type of situations, I am really a huge proponent of intuitive eating and mindfulness.
Yes.
And that's a phrase that you hear through any type of wellness journey because it's so important. It brings accountability and just awareness to why you're doing what you're doing. So for the people who are obsessing, I recommend, because I can't get anywhere with you unless you're ready for change, number one. Mm-hmm. So sometimes in the meantime, what is helpful is for you to take a minute and think about what got me here. Mm-hmm. So I like to tell people when we're talking about food, like, are you hungry really? Because if you're hungry, you should eat. I'm all for you to eat. You're hungry. Eat, please.
We cannot have you hangry over here. You remember pursuing peace, not driving dead on into hangry land.
Exactly. Nobody wants hangry. So if you're hungry, you should eat. But if you are just eating, is it because you're bored? Is it because you're actually thirsty? Because most of us are in a state of dehydration and don't even realize it. Is it because you're anxious, which, like you're saying, we're in high anxiety times right now. And so one of the ways that people are coping is with food. And so if you're on the obsessive end of that, why are you obsessing? Why are you counting your calories? Are you concerned about your weight changing? Would it be a negative thing for you to gain a couple of pounds? And then even if you're watching the scale, you gain a couple of pounds overnight. Is that really true fat gain? Do you think that happened overnight, or could it be that your body is fluids are shifting, or you have natural changes in your weight from day to day? So just taking a breath, taking a moment to kind of examine your behavior is really helpful.
Now, I wonder, even when you talk about that, the first thing that came to mind was the differences in the flux of male versus females.
Yeah.
And I have always heard that for females, our bodies just naturally flux. So you can literally do absolutely nothing different. And you could get on the scale and have one weight one time of the day and then another weight at another. And if you're obsessing about it, like, how crazy is that?
Exactly. And you're absolutely right. So the metabolism of men compared to women is different. There are factors that make it different. And so something like that, like, we all have fluid shifts, whether you're a man or a woman, but women's bodies are designed to carry more water for reproduction. So you might see more drastic fluid shifts, especially if it's around the time of menstrual cycle. You're definitely going to see some retention some days. You're going to see that you've lost a lot of water weight on other days. And so that's why it really does more harm than good to keep watching numbers on the scale. Yeah. And the same thing about obsessing over macros. That's another thing that is a buzzword in the nutrition world, is macros or calorie counting. Those things can really be, like, emotionally and mentally harmful, because you kind of fixate on something that's not necessarily representative of the big picture.
I was looking up the National Association of, I didn't even know this existed. It's the National Association of Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Disorders. Approximately 8 million people in the U.S. have anorexia, bulimia, or a related eating disorder. And 8 million people represents 3% of the U.S. population. How crazy is that?
That's crazy. And then when you think about, those are diagnosed eating disorders.
Diagnosed versus those that aren't diagnosed.
And doesn't take into account disordered eating patterns, which could be something as simple as like stressing over your calories, where you may not have a full-blown eating disorder, but you are so obsessed with one element of your diet.
Right. And I just want to throw it out there that when it comes down to men thinking that they're exempt, no, 10 to 15% of that number are men. Mm-hmm. So people don't necessarily, now let me give you this example, because this is where I'm going with this. The disparities in when people are looking at how to support females and their eating, and they pay attention to, you know, how we eat, how much we're eating, did we eat, should we eat more, what's our weight, but don't say anything to the men out there.
Exactly. And you know, those men are largely veterans, so military men and athletes, because they have such strict standards about their weight. They're checking in on time intervals to weigh themselves.
That is true. Mm-hmm. There's that whole PE standard of your job. Like, oh my goodness, you just opened up Pandora's box.
I know.
You really did, because as soon as I started talking, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute, people that for their job are required to, whether it's weight, like you mentioned, whether it's military or people that are professional athletes, but look at all the people that are in the media, that are in entertainment industries, that when they look a certain way, weight-wise, men and women, they have to keep that in order to not be typecast as that hefty, or, you know what I mean? Like that hefty character. And it's so mind-blowing, because when it's all said and done, I just can't even imagine how much stress that takes, or even how much money goes into that industry.
Oh.
Even taking it a step further, I don't know the numbers on this because I don't really pay attention to different weight loss programs, but how many weight loss programs have thrived off of calorie counting?
Oh my gosh, most of them. And I don't know the numbers on that either, but you're right. And so that's right. Like we're saying, like, it's reinforcing this idea of obsessing over one element of your diet. So if you actually speak with dietitians, often we are saying, eat a balanced diet, make sure your plate has a variety. You hardly ever hear us say, only eat 2,000 calories, only eat 1,800 calories. We're not going to do that unless we have assessed your specific condition.
Right.
So like you're saying, people are making money off of, for example, the apps, calorie tracker apps. The baseline for most of them is 1,200 calories, whether you're 6 feet tall or 5 feet tall, whether you're an 80-year-old man or a 30-year-old woman. That is not appropriate for everybody.
I mean, that's not even realistic.
That's not realistic at all, but it's sexy. Because if you tell somebody you're going to lose weight and you're going to be thin in a week or so if you eat these 1,200 calories, that sounds good. It doesn't sound good to say gradual 1 to 2 pounds a week weight. That's not as sexy.
That's ridiculous. And I even think of, again, the stressors associated with sometimes it deriving from the look. Mm-hmm. How do you look? Mm-hmm. You know, and that's a whole different story to go down of the history of what is put out there as beautiful, as gorgeous, as sexy, as cool, you know. But my mind then also goes to the fact that the bottom line is people are already fragile, right, mental state wise. There's so many stressors, and this is now the discussion, but this is beyond Mental Health Awareness Month. This right. is an everyday awareness of how you can actually find peace by eliminating these unnecessary stressors. And this stressor can manifest into something so much bigger to where there's body image issues that come from this. There's financial abuse that comes from it. It's just so much. And it's frustrating, like just thinking about it and digging into this with you, because I consider just your average person like myself that just because of genes, I look more slim, but then people might think that I'm super healthy. Mm-hmm. But that's not always the case. Like I'm still learning even what is necessary for me. And like you said, having a catered diet or sort of your mixture on your plate. What is it that you're having? Like I know, for instance, I had saw, and this was all before the pandemic.
We can still be around each other.
But before then, I was regularly going to an acupuncturist for pain management. And she also was a herbalist and had a certain diet for me. And it wasn't even necessarily like a meal plan, as opposed to, here's an example of what your meals could look like, your options. These are your options. And it all was for the sake of detoxing my blood, you know, helping me in that regard. But I have to tell you, I used to be big on spinach for salad. And because I did the digging, I found out that spinach is only adding to my particular blood problem.
Okay.
I'm supposed to do kale or, you know, arugula or something, as far as I forget but it's like too much iron or something that I'm intaking from it. I forget what it was. But either way, the point of it is people think that it's okay to just eat whatever as well, just because they have a smaller frame.
Yeah.
So, tell me what your thoughts are in general, almost like your go-to if no one has the ability to connect with someone that can run these tests or give that advice, what are some of the things that are accessible for meal planning at home?
So in terms of just generally what your plate should look like, starting there, the goal is to make half of your plate be fruits and vegetables. And most of us recognize the benefit of fruit and vegetables. We all recognize that those are good for you. I think that's what some of us struggle with the most. We don't struggle with the meat part. And so first having half of your plate be fruits and vegetables. You want a third of your plate to be a whole grain, so your starchy foods, and then a third of your plate to be lean proteins. And then taking it a step further, what does that even mean? Okay, so you hear people say eating the rainbow. And the reason you hear that is because you really need to represent when you are eating a variety of colors, you're representing a variety of food groups. Mm-hmm. So eating the rainbow helps you to make sure that you're getting different nutrients that work together. So for example, I know I'm spiraling, but I'm going to circle back.
I promise where you're going, because it's like, oh my goodness, I'm ready to hear it. Tell me.
But yeah, so there's so many foods that play a part in how we feel. So for example, magnesium is a nutrient getting good quality sleep. Mm-hmm. But you can get magnesium from fatty fish, you can get it from almonds, you can get it from bananas, you can get it from berries. So really having all of those things present on your plate is giving you a solid burst of that one nutrient. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things are like that. For example, like something like vitamin C. We know vitamin C is good for immunity, right? Yeah. Everybody recognizes that. And we think of oranges, we think of orange juice, but you can get vitamin C from bell peppers. You can get vitamin C from strawberries. There are other things that also contain those nutrients. So when you add a variety on your plate, you're really giving yourself your best chance.
I like that.
Fatty fish person, a fin fish person, but I love shell. Yeah. So fishes like tuna and salmon have a lot of omega-3s. They're really good for your brain. Mm-hmm. And also they have been linked to decreased risk of depression. So something like that. And also decreased risk of heart disease. So triple whammy right there.
Wow.
Having something like nuts, you always hear about nuts. Again, that's healthy fat, those omega-3s. So having your walnuts, your almonds, we just talked about magnesium is really good for relaxation and sleep. So that's why we're having those type of things. That's a lean protein and a healthy fat. Mm-hmm. Having things like beans and legumes, they have those B vitamins that are really good for energy. And they also help you in your uptake of other vitamins. So things like legumes, beans, chickpeas, my favorites. I love those. They're shelf stable. You can keep them forever. They can be a great base to a meal. They're cheap. Yes. So most people can find those and fit it in your budget. I love a good bean. Yes. And then of course
some rice.
Yes. So and then like you're saying, so like your whole grains, like your brown rice, your oatmeal, which I love to have oatmeal outside of breakfast. You can make oatmeal a savory option as well. Yeah. So having oatmeal and beans is giving you a variety of minerals in one meal. Plus you get the fiber that helps you feel full. You get the benefit of the soluble fiber that aids in decreasing your risk of heart disease. So you're really doing, killing a lot of birds with one stone. Right. So yeah, those are my favorite things. Variety of fruit and vegetables. You want your lean proteins, but especially fish. So I really recommend people try to lean on the fish. And lean on the plant-based proteins as well. Plants have a lot of protein in it. We don't think about that, but it does. So having a meat substitute like mushrooms or eggplants or beans, again, lentils, all of those things are really protein rich. And you don't have to have necessarily the red meat or the pork if you're trying to decrease that in your diet.
So say someone, and I'm asking for a friend.
Okay. Yes, friend.
Say someone is having a hard time getting their kids or their toddler to eat vegetables, but they'll eat plenty of fruit and they'll love their like fruit and granola type bars. They love those. But what would be a recommendation to get the substitute on the vegetables for the kids other than your vitamins?
I think that, and this is for adults too, so not just be sneaky. So someone just asked me this question the other day. They were asking me, like, how do I get more vegetables? Because I don't like salad. I was like, fair, I understand. I think if you can sneak in the vegetables, that's the best way to do it. So for example, using cauliflower rice instead of regular white rice. Cauliflower has a pretty neutral flavor. Okay. So it's easy to sneak it in something like a rice bowl where you won't really notice. It has similar texture, similar flavor, kind of a neutral flavor. So it's easy to sneak that in. Yeah. My favorite thing to do is if you're having a pasta. So say, for example, you're having spaghetti. Most of the time, kids like a spaghetti. You can put whatever vegetables you want to in the sauce. So chopping up your greens like your spinach or your kale and cooking that, because that cooks down really nicely.
Right.
Chopping up your mushrooms so you can get your vitamin D in there. Even throw some beans in if you want to instead of the meat, or lentils, because it gives you the texture of meat without the saturated fat that you get from red meat.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way to sneak in vegetables in something that's familiar, like a comfort food. So that's one of my favorite ways as well. And then also trying to make the imitation version, like a plant-forward imitation version. So like, of course, a veggie burger or something like that. Subbing out a veggie burger. I mean, maybe your child will know the difference, and maybe they won't. That's a good starting point. I like those kind of meat. They're called meat extenders, but for the people who are transitioning to a more plant-forward diet, sometimes you need a little bit of help. Mm-hmm. So having those meats, like the pre-packaged meat, can help you get over the hump until you're ready to try making it on your own. So something like a veggie burger or a soy-based chicken nugget that really tastes a lot like a regular chicken nugget.
Yeah.
Or like the soy beef crumbles if you're able to tolerate soy. Those are good ways to kind of sneak in, because a lot of times those things are also made with some sort of vegetable component as well.
Got it. So when it comes down to, again, I want to go to where you were going as far as foods and the moods.
Yeah. Okay.
During this time, as I said, a lot of people are stressed because of one thing or another. It seems like if everything could go wrong in the world, it's going on.
At this time, like right now, today.
All at the same time. But during this time, just for the sake of throwing out some tips that people can use, regardless of their mood, could we put into like categories like anxiety or depression? Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is dealing with anxiety, what are some of the things that they want to increase their intake of?
Okay. So I will say first, in general, circling back to my favorite thing to say, but the balance really plays a huge part in just overall making you feel your best. So a lot of times when we're feeling tired or fatigued, or you're feeling outwardly stressed, it's because your body is missing something. So again, putting the emphasis on balancing out that plate with representing these different food groups first. But then for something like depression, specifically, I talked about the fatty fish earlier. So choosing foods that are rich in those omega-3s. Omega-3s are really good. They have that association with decreased risk of depression. So that would be things that you find in like the fatty fish, avocados, different types of nuts, seeds. So I love a good sunflower seed. If you are a fan of a sunflower butter, because I don't like peanut butter, but I found that I like sunflower butter. That's a great source of omega-3. And then also fish oil supplements are also great if you want to include that in your diet as well. And then when we're thinking about things like anxiety, again, circling back to your sleep quality. So a nutrient like magnesium is important. So coming from your legumes, again, your omega-3s, again, vegetables, bananas have a good amount of magnesium in it. So having those kind of foods in your diet as well. And then
would I just need to have a few bananas at night to have, some support and falling asleep?
I think that we find the best result when it comes to health with consistency. And that is part of the reason why I'm so anti-diet culture, because diet culture does not promote consistency. It promotes a lifestyle that most people can't maintain. So a couple of bananas is not going to help you feel better. Like you might not eat the bananas and then you'll be like, "Ooh, that Angela told me something wrong."
Right. I'll be like, "Angela, I'm so
yes. But a strategy that tends to work is to focus on getting more of those healthful whole foods in your diet more often. So I like to make grocery shopping a game. It's not always great for my budget, but if you're better at budgeting than I am, to try to, encourage yourself to step out of your comfort zone and try some of those things that you think may be good for you, that you haven't tried before. Yeah. So if you haven't tried zucchini before, or you don't like zucchini sauteed, have you tried zucchini as a fry? Have you tried breaded zucchini, instead of a chicken parm type of thing? There are different ways that you can make foods work for you. So the goal is going to be to try to get more and more of those healthful, nutrient-dense foods in your diet more often.
Yeah. I really like that you say that, because ultimately that same concept is what they have for those that have regular allergies, for example. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I started coughing made me think of my allergies. And I was like, oh, shoot, I forgot my Zyrtec, right? But it's like, you don't get the benefit if you only use it the one time. Like, oh, I just feel a certain way, I'm going to get this acai bowl and, the smoothie, and then expect all of a sudden your body to have miracles and you're all of a sudden fit and all together, when ultimately the best thing that you can do is, like you said, make it an everyday practice, make it a lifestyle. And this just goes 100% hand in hand with that lifestyle of eliminating the toxic influences, eliminating the toxic things you put in, whether it's the things you put in your body, the things that you put in your mind, and the things you put into your spirit. I'm always talking about that mind, body, spirit, collaboration in holistic wellness, and you can't get that from, oh, I'm not going to eat any fruit until that's all there is to eat. I'm going to go for the random burrito in the freezer and that's it, that's all. And then say I'm healthy, or even question when all of a sudden your body starts to respond to it. And you feel weak, you feel tired all the time, you feel
bloated or gassy.
Yeah, and it's not fun. It's not fun. And another piece that I want you to really touch on, just from your point of view and in your line of work, people that you've spoken to, you've consulted with, when it comes down to creating that habit, what are some of the things that people should keep in mind? Because when we're talking about making it a lifestyle habit, when we're talking about making it I'd say, more consistent thing that we do versus not, cheat, okay, but your lifestyle is really based on, this is how I live, this is what I consume. What are your thoughts about developing not only that mindset, but even developing that actual, I have that habit?
I have a few tips about that one. Okay, so the first one is, I like what you just said, and what we've really been talking about is, number one, wellness is a journey. That's why you hear people refer to it as their wellness journey. Mm-hmm. So the first thing is that it's unrealistic to expect overnight results. That's just simply not how it works. That's not how your body works. Yeah. That is not how it works. So let's address that first and foremost. So you have to build a consistent routine. How do you get to that? Number two is, a lot of times in nutrition, people want to change everything about what they're doing on the first day. And that is often overwhelming. It can be intimidating. And then people feel like if they're not successful, they feel guilty, they feel frustrated, and it's easier to just slip back into unhealthy behavior. So I always approach things from what is the one thing that you think we can change and you think you can keep that up? Mm-hmm. And it could be that you were drinking 4 sweet teas a day, and all you can do now is reduce it down to 3 sweet teas a day. That's a step. That's progress. I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
So starting small, even if it's a super, super baby step, that's a step.
Yeah.
Just get started doing something.
Yeah.
So that's that. And then number three is everyone's journey is not going to look the same. So nutrition is not one size fits all. Mm-hmm. And what works for me and my lifestyle and my body may not work for you. Yeah. People have different level of tolerance. People have different barriers. People are at different stages of change. Mm-hmm. So you can't compare what's happening on your journey with what's happening on your neighbor's journey. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where a lot of times we get caught up.
Absolutely, because everybody knows that our physical bodies are different, but people forget to remember our body's reaction to what we're doing is also different. Because I may be able to, and this actually isn't the case, but I may be able to eat tacos all day, every day, and not have many problems. I don't know what tacos came up, but it's Friday, and I was
That's true.
But the whole point is, everybody also can't. I mean, I just want to highlight that you already said it, but people have to realize that just because someone next to you is able to get on their fat diet, go to their random 3-month trial of a workout coach, and be all of a sudden looking glamorous and GQ ready. But if you do the same thing, your body's not going to respond. Mm-hmm. And just as a reminder, we're still in Mental Health Awareness Month. I want to bring about awareness of how you can use that and set yourself up for failure.
Yes. Because you also don't know what's happening behind the scenes with the person on the fat diet either. Mm-hmm. Are they having anxiety and stress because they are always like focused on what can they eat, what time can they eat, did they eat too much of this, did they eat too much of that? Are they feeling sick because transitioning to a restrictive diet causes physical sickness symptoms in some people? So are they walking around feeling lightheaded and having headaches, but they look great? Are they feeling great now, but then in 6 months from now, you've noticed that they're back to wherever they started or gained more weight? So it's, there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. And so it's a really slippery slope. People always want to do what they saw someone else do, but that's not how it works. You should be proud of the fact that whatever works for you nutritionally is what works for you. Yeah. And getting to that, figuring that out, learning that about yourself should really be the goal.
And I'm glad that you brought up and you mentioned this earlier on, but bringing up different people's medical conditions possibly. And one thing that I wanted to ask is if you have any tip for people who might have low blood sugar, and the tip is all around keeping a consistent diet, especially when they have kids. Low blood sugar, keeping a consistent diet when you have kids, and it may be a matter of distraction, a matter of I need to get something quick and go. I gotta grab and go. What are your thoughts about that?
So I think that we got to find a strategy. Like, what is the strategy? Because that's the reality. Most of us are living in the type of world where you are doing this, and this, and it's easy to let things fall through the cracks. But having low blood sugar can be super, super critical. People end up in the hospital behind that with permanent damage. So you want to avoid that if possible. So things like setting a timer, if you have to, I am absolutely a fan of that. You got to do what you got to do. Let that Apple Watch give you an alert that it's time for you to have a snack right now. You got to do that and get admitted to the hospital. Yeah. If you need to do something, some people find that journaling what they're eating helps them. So a lot of times if you see a dietitian, they'll ask you about what you eat in the last 3 days. Journaling helps you to be accountable and actually put on paper and see in front of you. Because a lot of times, this is what we do. We overestimate or underestimate what we're eating. That's just human nature. If I ask you how much ice cream you had, you go, just a couple of spoonfuls. But if I ask you to pay attention to everything you ate and write it down, you're going to get closer to the truth of the matter that maybe it was 2 bowls of ice cream, you know?
I ate the whole tub.
Yes, I ate a whole gallon. And that's
it was a rough week.
So kind of journaling is a way for you to stay in the moment and stay mindful as well. If you need to get an accountability partner, like we have to do sometimes when you're working out or when you are starting any kind of new habit, smoking cessation or whatever the case may be, do that. Get somebody that you trust to check in with you, to ask you how you're doing with staying on track with your goal, which in this case is nourishing your body so that your blood sugar doesn't fall. And then the other thing, again, my favorite thing is listening to your body will tell you when your blood sugar is getting low. You start feeling dizzy, you start feeling sweaty, you're shaking now, you notice your attitude start flaring up, the blood sugar is dropping. It's time for a snack. So listening to that and having something portable, something like your emergency stash that you can get to real quick, that might help you in those situations.
And I like the fact that the discussion with the pre-planning. I like the meal prepping. That's what you call it. Because I know that when I do it, and I don't get to do it all the time, so I got to get on that. But when I do it consistently, it takes the thought out of it. It takes the emotion out of it, the stress out of it. It is just, this is what I have. And a lot of times when you're busy and you have kids anyway, because like I said, I have a 2-year-old running around. And so when it's said and done, if I'm being particular about his food intake, I'm not having time for myself unless I do the meal prepping for myself as well. Because he has his particular diet. But if I, for instance, and actually I'm so glad we had this discussion, because crazy enough, I have some vegan lentil soup that I had made and froze, and I forgot I put it in the freezer.
Oh, there you go. That's lunch.
And like making big bulks of the good stuff and putting it away, because a lot of times when you have kids, whether it's one kid, little kid, a dog kid, you are busy. And so you end up going to the quickest thing. But how quick is a pre-made healthy meal? And I think, just from my personal experience, that also helps boost your just wellness, because you feel good. It builds your self-confidence, like, oh, I'm eating good. You take little pictures, all of a sudden a foodie on Facebook. Or
Right.
But it all comes together because, again, all of it's linked. What you put into your body, and whatever the sense is, it does manifest. And it has a great impact. And I just really want to encourage people. And there was a time that during one of our episodes that I was sharing that it takes 66 days or something like that in order to establish a habit. And so it's really about the muscle memory. It may not take as long, and for some people it may take longer, but the whole point is you have to stick to it. And like you said, if you are being realistic about it, I always bring in the concept that's really known in the mental health world of your SMART goals. Making sure that it is actually something you could reach. Even if it's this week, I'm going to eat less Twinkies.
Yeah.
That helps. I'm going to finish this ice cream, but I'm not going to buy any more for 2, grocery trips. Because if it's not in the house, you're not eating it. Right? So I think that when it comes down to it, it's all about self-worth and how much you are willing to put into that change, because the research is out there. Here you are, an expert in your field. You know about nutrition. You know about the impacts that it has on people's well-being. And I'm sure you've seen times where the bad and the worst case scenarios also come to you too.
Oh.
Because it's like, I need to have surgery, but they even said now that it's because of my weight and my diet, and it's not going to make sense to have this surgery if, But either way, I really, really appreciate that part. Another question that came up for me, and it's, again, because of my bias with having sickle cell disease and blood types. What types of food what you say is good to even help with building a metabolism or just sort of recharging yourself in a healthy way to get yourself going?
I think that is, it's difficult to just say blanket wise because you have sickle cells. So for you, your body is dealing with that issue. And for someone else, it could be high blood pressure or diabetes or whatever the case. So again, going back to the balance, overall, generally, what does your plate look like? And that is variety of foods. Get it as close to the way that it comes. So meaning if it grows from the earth, get it as close to that as possible. If it is an animal, you want it as minimally processed as possible. So no extra sauces and seasonings prepackaged. That's the stuff that you want to avoid. Mm-hmm. But in terms of feeling your best, for Americans, what we really struggle with is too much sugar, too much salt. And I think we feel like if we're not adding it at the table, then we're doing okay. Mm-hmm. But what we don't realize is most things already come too much sugar, too much salt. So even if you don't change anything, if you're paying attention to those things, because when you have too much sugar in your body, you do start to feel sluggish. You start to feel slow. And the foods that tend to have more sugar and more salt tend to be heavily processed, convenience foods that also make you feel bloated. They also make you feel gassy. For some people, they make you feel irregular. You might notice that you have a lot of headaches. Those things are all tied together. So that's why you kind of hear people preach about eating whole, nutritious foods, because truly, when you don't have all those extra things, your body feels better.
I think that's great. And I really appreciate your professionalism, because you could have just said, well, this is what you do for this. I threw you a little sneak question in there.
You tried me.
I tried. It didn't work. So I appreciate that. So just for my listeners know, you need to check into Miss Angela Stansel, because she will get you all the way right. And she won't try to be fooled. She will not be fooled by
no.
But before we go, I want you to let us know, first of all, thank you again for being here on Pop. And maybe we'll bring you back on again. I'm hoping
I would love to come back,
because there's just so much stuff to dig into with nutrition and wellness, whole health type of perspective when it comes down to health and wellness and peace. But I want to say this, you need to have your information all the way out there. Okay. So people can reach you. Let me know how people can reach you. Let me know what you have coming up. Just tell our listeners what's going on.
Okay, here's what I have going on. So I'm Angela Stansel. I have years of experience in critical care, long-term care, food service nutrition, and one-on-one nutrition counseling. My company is Slice Nutrition Solutions, LLC. So you can find me on Facebook at Slice Nutrition. That's my page. You can email me if you have questions. I saw a couple of people have questions that we might not have gotten to. So I'm Angela at slicenutrition.com. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. I try to be around every day on LinkedIn. Angela Stansel, MSRDLDN. Coming up for me, I'm really trying to be more present on my social channels. I want you to interact with me. I want to answer your questions online every week. So send me a message, ask me your questions. I might feature you. And then go to my website, slicenutrition.com. Join my newsletter. You'll get blog updates. You'll hear about what I'm talking about on my social channels in case you are one of these busy people we talk about who doesn't have time to check in. And you also just get a chance to get a personal message from me and interact with me as well.
That is amazing. I hope you guys link up with her. We do need to mind our food. We need to take care of that. Yeah, we need to do that. So I will be providing, once this is gone, this is a live recording, but once you are hearing this on the site, you should be able to just click the link below and check out Ms. Stansel and Slice Nutrition. And also, if you have any other questions, again, mental health, if it's in regards to coaching, things like that, any questions that you have, you can also reach either myself or Ms. Stansel by going to my website, www.officialspconsultinggroup.com. And guess what? Next month, we're going to be talking about mindfulness. Next month is literally just a couple of days away. So we're going to be going through that journey of mindfulness, and it's not going to be so typical. So please tune in next Friday. We are here every Friday on your favorite podcast app or wherever you listen at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.